Hey there, self-care warriors. Welcome back to Self-Care Haven. Today I want to talk about narcissistic families. These types of family structures are incredibly toxic. They tend to have both parents that are narcissistic, or at least one NPD parent and another disordered parent who may or not may have NPD or may not have NPD, may have a different disorder besides NPD, perhaps another personality disorder, or they may be suffering from the effects of trauma bonding, or they could be just as toxic and sadistic themselves. Whatever other disorder that other parent has, they both work together in this narcissistic family unit. And in a narcissistically abusive family unit, there tends to be a main golden child and a main scapegoat. There can also be a few golden children and one scapegoat. Sometimes the roles can be flexible, as in the parents are so toxic that they pit the siblings against each other in order to maintain that sense of control and power. Whereas in other family structures, it may be fairly stagnant. So there may be one golden child for the entirety of their existence. One golden child that is coddled, raised with very high expectations, is praised incessantly, and then there's the scapegoat, the rebel. The rebel child is the one who is unloved. And he or she tends to be the one that's pathologized because he or she is the one that's subject to the most trauma. And growing up as a scapegoat can have its many disadvantages as well as advantages. The disadvantages mainly have to do with the effects of trauma. Because you are not coddled, because you are not praised, you are often demeaned, belittled, you are criticized endlessly, and you are put down in ways that no child should ever have to be put down. You face a tremendous amount of toxic shame and guilt that you may carry with you through the rest of your life if you don't seek treatment for your trauma. And even when you do seek treatment, there's so much unraveling of that toxic shame and rage, because if you experience that type of abuse as early as childhood, you were basically given the foundations for poor boundaries, a very unstable self-image, and the type of feedback that you received as a child was incredibly traumatic. It was not the type of realistic, balanced feedback that loving, healthy parents give to their children. This was the type of feedback that could cut you very deeply to your core, and it is often that very feedback that creates those core wounds that make us incredibly vulnerable to narcissists. Now, if you did have a childhood like this and you modeled that sort of subconscious wounding with other relationships, as in you tended to be in relationships with narcissists, know that this is not your fault. This is something that has been programmed into you from a very young age. And until you wake up to that pattern, you are trying to escape the pain from not only your childhood, but also the wounding that the narcissist has placed on you and has re-triggered in you and entrenched in you through your own childhood programming. They use any type of vulnerability they can get their hands on. So if you happen to be someone who has that childhood programming with a narcissistic family unit, that's something that they're going to exploit, just like any other vulnerability. It doesn't make you any less worthy, and it doesn't mean that you have to blame yourself for any of the abuse that you received, because of course, on the surface level, what you were trying to achieve was a good, healthy relationship, but you were doing it with the disordered types that unfortunately reflected the same parental figures that raised you. So in the family unit, the golden children, or the golden child, if there's only one golden child, tends to be the flying monkey that tries to pry information out of you and do not trust the flying monkey, because the golden child may be convincing in some aspects. The golden child might fool you into thinking that they are on your side, but really they're working against you with that narcissistic parent in order to pathologize you, in order to silence your voice. And the golden child may or may not be sadistic and narcissistic themselves. It really depends. However, there are golden children who do not understand the depth of their own parents' pathology because they did not experience it as much firsthand. Because they were the golden child or the golden children, they did not experience the terrible mistreatment that you may have experienced. They might have witnessed it, but they did not experience it for themselves. So they're going to have a slightly different experience. Well, not even slightly, drastically different experience than you have. And so it's important to remember that narcissism can have a hereditary component. Studies have shown this, and that it can be passed down. So the golden child may himself or herself may very well be a narcissist themselves. And the advantage to being the scapegoat, being the rebel child, being the black sheep, is that you are the only one that is awake. You are the one who is awake. You are awake to the mistreatment. You are awake to the abuse. Once you discover what narcissistic abuse is, and you realize how psychologically covert and insidious and damaging it can be, you are the one who is awake. Just like Plato's allegory of the cave, the people who were chained in the cave, watching the shadows, thought that the shadows were a reflection of what was going on in real life. But they were just shadows. You have stepped outside of the cave. You are no longer asleep. You are no longer mistaking shadows for real life or light. You've seen the light. You know exactly what's going on. You've woken up. And once you've woken up, there's no going back. So if you came from a narcissistic family unit and you are the black sheep, the scapegoat, remember, you are the one who is fully awake. Now, whether or not the golden child will also, have their role taken away from them, it remains to be seen. It depends on the agenda of the parents. The parents work together usually in order to create children that they can control and manage down, use as trophies. It's very sick how they do this. And if you dare to defy them and you dare to get out of their control in some way, that's when you'll face the retaliation and the punishment, because you are never really loved as a real human being. You are loved as an object. You weren't even loved, I should say. You were either overvalued or devalued as an object. So it's really important to keep in mind and stay grounded in your own reality as the scapegoat, or even as a golden child who woke up. If you happen to be a golden child that woke up, kudos to you. And whoever you are, whatever roles you may have played, whether those roles had been switched or whether you were pitted against each other and now you're both awake, or whether you're the only one who's awake in your family, remember, you can still stay grounded in your truth. You know the reality of what you've experienced. You know the pain, the heartache, the gaslighting, the projection, the triangulation. There's a lot of triangulation in those types of families. And in that enmeshed family unit, everything is just so micromanaged. Every facet of your behavior is completely micromanaged. Every action that you take is criticized. Everything you do and say is under the microscope for potential degradation. Narcissistic parents will find ways to belittle you and make really cutting remarks to where it hurts most, just like narcissistic partners. They can sabotage you in ways that a parent should never sabotage or undermine a child in that manner. Like, they will do so much to cut you down and pull you down. And you will never be enough to them. So no matter what you've accomplished, no matter what you have done in your life or how much progress you've made, these types of family units do not care about that, and they will make sure that you aren't proud of your accomplishments, because they don't want you to have anything outside of them that could potentially free you from their influence. The reality of these types of toxic family environments is that you have to get out. If you have the opportunity to go no contact, or at least low contact with your narcissistic family units, please do. There's no better time than now to save your own life. Now, if any younger listeners are listening and maybe you are maybe 18 and living with your parents, or maybe for some reason, maybe your parents are ill or there's some sort of financial issues going on and you have to maintain some sort of contact with your parents, or perhaps you just haven't broken free from them yet and you continue contact with them because of guilt or shame that they've instilled in you, remember, you are risking your own life in the process, because the more you maintain contact with these vultures, and yes, they really are vultures. I know it sounds foreign to dehumanize, in a sense, people who raised us and people who share our DNA, but just because they share our DNA does not make them family. If they are emotional vultures and they are trying to suck the lifeblood out of you for their own agenda, and they are only seeing you as an object to be used, to be objectified and tormented and used for their own agenda, used to show off when they need it, and used to devalue when they need to control and abuse something or someone, that is not a parent. That is someone who is out to control, demean, and abuse you. So whatever opportunity you have, take it in order to go no contact or low contact if you have to with your narcissistic family unit. And that includes the golden children. That includes the other scapegoats if they are toxic and they're acting as flying monkeys. If they're not toxic, feel free to maintain contact with the people you trust and who validate you, and you feel like they're on your side, and you know for a fact that they are on your side, because these types of golden children who are flying monkeys can play that role of pretending that they support you very well just to stab you in the back. So be very wary of that. I don't want to instill a sense of paranoia in you, but at the same time, I want you to just be cautious, be vigilant about the signs and the red flags that you are seeing. If you see flying monkey behavior in any one of your family members, whether these are extended relatives or whether it's in the immediate family unit, be very wary. And of course, this type of narcissistic family unit can also exist in the extended family as well, in cousins and in grandparents. So and just other family members in general. So, and even friends of families as well. I would count that as part of the family, because they might have influenced you while you were growing up. And in these types of family units, there can be a lot of boundaries crossed. And of course, I've heard horrific stories of sexual abuse as well. So there's a lot of traumas that can happen, lots of different types of traumas that can happen in these types of units, because there's no boundaries and the children are seen as objects and trophies. And it's really important that you do whatever you need for your own self-care, your own sanity, because these are the types of family units that can make you feel like you are the crazy one and they are the normal ones, because they present that polished image to society. It's very easy for a narcissistic family unit to make the scapegoat child look like the crazy one, or look like they are the ones out of control, when in fact it's the parents and the golden children who are driving that that poor scapegoat into their breaking point and affecting their emotional well-being and early stages of development, where they're really vulnerable and susceptible to being traumatized and repeating that trauma repetition cycle, engaging in that trauma repetition cycle. So I just wanted to make a video on sort of the dynamics of this type of family unit, and I'll probably make another video on it, because I know that I've had a few viewers comment and say, can you make more videos about narcissistic parents and family members, because those are the types of people that we can't control having in our lives. And that's not true. You can control having them as long as you own your agency, and it depends on your living situation, it depends on your finances and your age as well, because if I have any younger listeners who may still be living with their parents, or who may still depend on their parents, or they might have some sort of other ties with them financially, or maybe even just emotionally and psychologically, and in terms of illness, then they need to reevaluate and make a plan to get out of that type of toxic environment. And for the rest who are already away from their families, you do have a choice. You do have a choice in how much you interact with them. You do have a choice. Unless they're stalking and harassing you, that is something that also needs to be taken into account, and developed a plan against. How are you going to address if they stalk and harass you? Make sure that you're documenting things. Make sure that you have things on your side and support on your side in the case that they do stalk or harass you. And if they are stalking and harassing you online, be sure to document that as well. Just document. I mean, that's a great way to preemptively protect yourself. And if you have to consult services that help you legally, do it. If you have to seek help from outside agencies, do it. Find a support network that is outside of the control and influence of your narcissistic family unit. And make sure that you take care of yourself first. Make yourself the first priority. I hope you know that you are the one who is awake, and for that you have the biggest advantage. Narcissists do underestimate the power of their victims, but their victims can empower themselves and transcend the abuse that they've experienced. I hope to talk to you guys soon, and until then, take care. For more information about narcissistic abuse and narcissistic families, be sure to check out my book, Becoming the Narcissist's Nightmare: How to Devalue and Discard the Narcissist While Supplying Yourself. The link will be in the description below.